Okay, so we're in, the truth is we're in the middle of this this sugya, which is one of the most famous sugyas of Cheskes Sabatim, called Naschot Rabbi Abbas. We're going to need to recap to make sure we understand it. Before we get into the where we left off last time, which is Rosh Bam. So Naschot Rabbi Abbas is on Lamed Gimel Lamed Beis. Lamed Gimel Lamed Beis. Naschot is an ingot. You know what an ingot is? An ingot, like a block of precious metal, basically, right? Yeah, that's what it is. That's what a naschot is. But the story starts before then. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 lines up on Lamed Gimel Lamed Beis. My voice, my ara, same as we started all of these cases. Someone says to someone else, "What are you doing in my land?" Malay said to him, "Because I bought it from you, and you've been there for 3 years. That's why I'm here, because I'm just legitimate." I see Chad Sado. He brought one aid, the Ochla Tlas Shoni. He brought one aid that he had used it for 3 years. Now he's in a bit of he's not in a great position, but you would say, well, he's not in a terrible position. He's claiming a chazaka 3 years, and he's got a taina. His taina is, I bought it from you. But the problem is he hasn't got any evidence to support it, or at least not the aid as we need. He's only got one aid. The question is, what do we do with this case? So the Rabbanon in front of Abai thought to say that we should judge this case the same way that we judge the case of Naschot Rabbi Abba was treated. There was a certain chap who snatched this block of metal from his friend. And remember, this is metaltalin. It's movable. It's not the same as land, but we'll see how we're going to compare it. Also, the Kamei de Rabbi Ami came in front of Rabbi Ami. Rabbi Abba Kamei, and Rabbi Abba was sitting in front of Rabbi Ami. I see, and we'll see why the Gemora talks about that in a second. I see Chad Sado, he brought one aid, a Mechtav Chot Fomines. He brought one aid that this guy had snatched it from him. So Omalei said to him, in Chotfi, it's true, I did snatch it, V'didi Chotfi, but it was mine. I snatched it, but it belonged to me, and that's why I took it. Omar Rabbi Ami, Rabbi says, Hey, Daini Lahai Dino. How are the judges going to judge this case? What are we going to do about this case? And he goes on to explain what the problem is. Because whatever direction you go in, it seems you are snookered, you're stuck in this scenario, right? Lishalem, if you force him to pay, right? In other words, you say like this, well, he's agreed that he took it. He's moida. He's moida that he took it from him, shechotaf, right? And you can't just snatch something from someone else. I can't take your water bottle, David, and I say it's mine. Can't do that. That's against the rules. Not allowed to do that. You will be summarily removed from my possession. It's yours. Everyone knows yours. Everyone saw you walk in with that bottle, so it's got a chazaka that it's yours. I can't just take it and say it's mine. Okay, so make him pay it back. You can't, because leikotre sadi. There isn't two aidim in this case that he took it. Okay, in other words, there's only one aid. It's not the same as me sort of taking it in front of everyone else. There's only one aid. Okay, so he could have said, and it's a migo really. He could have said, I didn't take it at all, and he'd be believed, because there's no reason why he wouldn't be. So therefore, he's also believed to say, yeah, that it's mine. That's mine. He was moida. He admitted that he had stolen. That he had taken it. So let's go to the other. Obviously, then the other direction. So liftere. Let's say it's Potter. He says, I took it, but it's mine. So he should exempt him. No problem. Let him off scot-free. Okay. Again, what's the logic to let him to putter him? Because he has a migo. Again, forget about the aid for a minute. Single aid, right? He's got a migo. Yeah. If I come along, if I have a bottle, in my let's do it the other way around. So David walks in with his bottle of water, and I say that bottle of water is that's not right. No, someone accuses him. That's right. Someone turns on. I turn to David and say that bottle of water is mine. And I accuse it. You took my bottle of water. If you respond to me that yes, it's true, I took it from you, but it's mine. Okay, that it's mine. So then that's a migo. Migo you could have said, right? You could have said that you didn't you didn't snatch it at all. All right. Okay. You could have said it was always mine. David could have responded, and I wouldn't be able to get it because that's like hamotzi mechavel of haraya. So you could have said nothing. You could have just said it's always been mine, right? So if you say it's true that I took it from you, but I took it from you because it was always mine, because in other words you had my stolen goods, that's a regular migay and that should be believed. So the Gemora says the problem is here you can't say that because ikachad sada. There is one aid against him, and if he said loy chotvi, if he would deny it, again his whole believability is the migay. Okay, the migay is, since he could have said I didn't take it at all, therefore he's believed when he says, yes, I took it. He's moided that he took it, but he says it's mine. That's the migay. Migay could have said I didn't take it. Here, if he would have said, right, I didn't take it, you have to make a shvur. Because the halacha is, if you have one aid contradicting you, one aid says you took something, and you say, no, I didn't take it, the halacha is you have to make a shvur. Right, that's the din of aid. One aid is mechayev shvur. The Torah says, you can't have one aid, right? Aid echad doesn't do anything. So then the Gemara, one aid is not. It can't be mechayev moment, right? The shvur who come, but one can be mechayev shvur. That's the strength of one aid. So because I could not say I could not say I didn't snatch it, because had I said that, I'd have to make a shvur. So that the migay doesn't exist then, because it's not a migay, right? Remember, always a migay, you have to be, I genuinely could have said that, and therefore believe me when I said that. No, you wouldn't have said that, because then you would have to make a shvur. So obviously you wouldn't have said that, right? Because no one likes to make a shvur, especially if you're lying. Again, yeah, that's the whole logic of a migay. If you were lying, you would have said a better lie, but you wouldn't have said that, because that would have made you make a shvur, and you weren't thinking who's going to make a shvur. It's one thing lying, it's another thing making a shvur, right? Well, it's worse to make a shvur than lie.
I mean, someone's already asleep.
It is true because that's human. We work with psychology. Migay is based on a simple, logical psychological argument, right? There's a logic to believe you, because if you were a liar, you would have said a better lie, right? It would only be.
Do we have a rule that someone should take it so serious?
Yeah, I think so. Yes. I think so. I think so. I know that, for example, in Basra, it's regularly used. I think I mentioned this in the past. Basra, there's a Sefer Torah in the courtroom. Not on Kodesh, there's a Sefer Torah, which we use to learn from on Tanesim. But apart from that mincha, apart from that use, the Dayanim will regularly say to people, especially if it's needed, they'll say, you should just be aware. When you say what you're going to say, it could be they do this as a matter of course in some cases, like in Gittin or whatever. You should be aware there's a Sefer Torah. That's not quite the same as making them make a shvur, but it impresses the seriousness of what they're about to say, or what their words are. Right.
It's common practice at the end of the day. If in a court of law, you take an oath on the Bible.
Exactly.
People weirdly take that still today.
Exactly.
Some psychological reason why you prepared to testify.
Yeah, that's right. Absolutely, 100%.
Yeah,
100%. The Dina Bromsky story. You all know the Dina Bromsky story.
Yeah, that one does.
Yeah. You don't know the Dina Bromsky story? Okay, I got to share this story. They must know it, but it's worth it, right?
Yeah.
It's basically Dina Bromsky was once called to testify in a court of law about a certain case, and it was in the high court, whatever, and he was said, and the judge gets up and says, "Is it identify who the witness is?" He says, "Is it true that you are the most senior legal judge or Jewish law in the whole of Europe or whatever?" And he said, "Yes, Your Honor, this is true." And he said, "Tell me, is there no such thing as humility in your religion?" And he said, "There is, but I'm under oath." Right? Which is a great story. Okay, so anyway, so that's so there you are. So the point is that people, you do take it seriously, and I think therefore that's why here the migay falls away. Okay, so therefore clearly you can't just pater him because he's got no migay. So therefore, about the third option, lishtaba, let him make a shvur. The whole thing we've been saying is that an aid is mechayev shvur, right? An aid is mechayev shvur. Now the problem is he can't. Why not? Ha'omar michtav chotfa, because he said that he took it. V'kivan da'omar de chotfa havaleke gazlan, and since he said that he snatched it, it's like he's a gazlan. It's like he's a thief. Okay, so the point here is, let's see the Rashbam here on this one. It's worth going over this 4 lines down. Lishtaba, where it says lishtaba. We've done the others. We've done this as well, but we should recap it. Lishtaba is a shvur shal aid mechayev. Let him make it a shvur that the aid is mechayev him. Eino yochol, he can't make that. The homodi de chotaf. He's agreed that he's snatched it. But ha'ed mechayver l'shova shalei chotaf. And the aid has made him make a shvua, is obligating him to make a shvua that he didn't take it. Lahachish esoed, to contradict the aid. The hachim ashmakro. This is what the pasuk implies. To pay money that he denies, and the aid says yochayev. That's what the aid cannot make him pay. I will come with a shvua. But the aid can make him make a shvua to contradict the aid. Shlechotav moment said it didn't take this moment. That is the shvua. There isn't another option. That is the shvua that he needs to make to deny what the aid says. You took it, I didn't take it. That's the shvua. But lagabi hach shvua, and with regards to this shvua, posalu kagazan makes a call shvua. It's just a comparison to a thief. It's a bit of a confusing. Just a comparison. Just like a thief cannot make any shvua. In this respect, in the context of making this shvua, this guy is like a gazan. Why? He can't make a shvua that he stole his own thing, right? Because that's not the shvua which he's allowed to make. It doesn't work. The deal doesn't work like that. You're not allowed to make any shvua. The aid can't. It's not that aid. The aid exists. Therefore, you have to make a shvua and choose which shvua you like to make. No, that's not how it works. You can't make the shvua. I did take it, but it's mine. It doesn't work like that. And he can't be exempted, as we said, without anything because he's lost his migo because of the presence of the aid. So in other words, the point is the only option he has to make a shvua with an aid is to deny the aid, but he can't. He said, I took it. He said that he snatched it. He says that he took his own, and therefore he's disqualified from making this shvua. Like a gazlan is disqualified from all shvuos. Therefore, Rabbi Ami says we're stuck. And Omale Rabbi Abba, back to the Gemora, 4 lines down. Omale Rabbi Abba, Rabbi Abba said the solution can only be the thing is, anyone who's mechuyev to make a shvua, who cannot make that shvua, they have to pay. That's the halacha. That is the halacha. So that means to say that this guy needs to pay back the piece of metal that he took. You with me? Right? Again, the case was that a nascha, the guy snatched a piece of metal from someone else. The guy says, well, that's not very nice, and he tries to get it back from him. And there's one aid that he snatched it. Okay? Now that aid is mechayev shvua. Okay? Because there's an aid there who says that, you've got to make a shvua to contradict the aid. There's enough of a... That's enough to make you make a shvua. It's a aid that you took it. Problem is you can't make a shvua. The only shvua you can make is to deny, but you didn't deny. You already said that you did take it, but it was yours, and therefore you're stuck. And as a result of being stuck, the only thing you can do is if you're mechuyev shvua and you cannot make that shvua, could be because of a technical reason, for whatever reason you cannot make the shvua, the halacha is you have to pay. So the Gemora wants to say that our scenario is comparable. Okay? What do you mean? Yeah. Right.
But the shvua you're talking about is to say that he didn't take. He's got one that was to say he took.
He can deny that and say I didn't take it, but he can't do that now.
He did take it.
He said he took it because he's admitted. Because that shvua is not a shvua that an aid can be mechayev. It's quite confusing. The only shvua that an aid can be mechayev, right, is to contradict the aid. The Torah says that an aid cannot make you pay up, but he can make you make a shvua that what he's saying is false. That he said, not more than that you did not take it, or that's not your that to deny the point that the aid is making. So the aid is saying you took it, you can deny it. That's what you can make a shvua. You cannot make a shvua that says I agree with you, but it's mine. But I took my money. It just says this doesn't work. It's not something that the aid can be mechayev shvua. Now the Rashbam explains. Look at the next Rashbam. We can say the same thing here. When there are 2 agents that he consumed 3 years chazaka, right? We can do exactly the same thing in our case. If there were 2 Eidim that he actually used it for 3 years, we'd give it to him. If there aren't any Eidim, we take it away from him. This is the case of the guy who claims 3 years chazaka and then you bought it from him. Yeah. Imagine a lamara, and we give it back to the owner. If there's 1 aid that he used it for 3 years, what should he do? Lishtaba. He has to make a shvur. The eid echod lishvur kam. An eid echod can make you make a shvur. Afilu lo have a karka. So once Rambam says afilu lo have a karka, even if it wasn't land, you can't make a shvur here anyway because it's land. It's karka. You can't make ein shvur ala karkot. Lo mashpinon le amayda asit sadeh. We still couldn't make him make a shvur on that which the aid has testified. So lo kofale, because he's not denying it. Elomoidi le da'achal. He's agreeing to the aid that he consumed the property. And he's simply saying, in ochli b'didi ochli. I consumed it, but it was mine. I owned it. So again, the same result. It's a different case, but the result is the same. In a situation where you have 1 aid who says effectively, who does something or says something that can obligate you to make a shvur ostensibly, what does the aid say? The aid says you ate it, you were there for 3 years. Well, 1 aid is not good enough. So what can an aid do? 1 aid, all they can do is make you make a shvur. You can't make a shvur. What shvur are you going to make? Deny the aid? Because you're not going to deny the aid. You're going to agree with the aid. Now, Abai, I know what you're thinking. I know what you're thinking. You're thinking this doesn't really match up. The cases don't match up. Why not? That's true. But even leaving that aside, there's another reason why they don't match up. Think of where the aid is.
The opposite side. Yeah.
Right? The cases are completely different. Because on one case, I'm bringing the aid because you took my property. The aid is on my team, the owner of the naskha. Yeah? Whereas in the case of the land, it's all the opposite, it's the other way around. The aid is supporting the person who is claiming the land as his own. So the cases are completely incomparable. If I have an aid that's on my team, then how can I ever make me make a shvur? It doesn't really, and that's what Abai says. Omale Abai mi domi, it's incomparable. Jeremy, we're at 1, 2, 3, 5 lines up. We're just still recapping what we did last time because it was a while ago. 5 lines up from the end of Lamadala Damadala. Omale Abai mi domi, it's incomparable. Hosif Sadol Urika Ossi. There, the aid is coming to damage his case. When another one comes along and supports the aid who says that you snatched the piece of metal, we take it away from him. In other words, that would be game over for the guy who claims that it's his. Over here, coming to support him. And therefore, when another aid comes, we give it to him. It's supporting him. It's supporting him. So let's see the Rashbam. It's not comparable. In the case of Rabbi Abba, the 1 aid is coming to damage the snatcher. He's testifying against him that he snatched it. And he's damaging the migoy of the snatcher. That's he's got no more migoy because he's testifying that he snatched it. And he's obligated to make a shvur. And since he can't make a shvur, we said he has to pay. If he had another aid who testifies like the first one that he saw him snatch it, we take it away from him. And the shvur would not help him even if he could make a shvur. So that's why it isn't. Why is it that in the case of the naschol, what Hashem is trying to explain is that why is it in the case of the naschol we go down the route of saying because he can't make an oath, we make him pay. Why? It's not fair. There's no to aid him. How can you take the money away? You understand? What's the logic of this klal of Rabbi Abba that someone who is obligated to make a shvur yet can't has to pay? So there's the Rashbam. You know what the logic is? The logic is that he's halfway there to losing it already. Because I've got an aid. I've got an aid telling me, yes, that I'm a liar. I've got an aid saying that you took it from this guy. And all we need is one more aid to join up with the first aid, and I've lost it. It's game over for me. And therefore, there's a logic to say shvur is a way out. there's a route, there's an exit route here to allow you to get off, free, because there's only one aid against you, if you can make a shvur. But in the event that you can't make a shvur because of what you already said, right, which was that you already said it, claiming it's yours, you're stuck, right? Then obviously you've got to pay, right? Obviously you've got to pay. Because actually, at the end of the day, that's the direction you're going in with the aid who's against you. All it needs is one more aid to support him and you're finished. But hoch over here, but dim karkas there.
Well, the aid.
The aid is saying that he snatched. The aid is saying that the aid is saying, yeah, that's right. The aid is saying that he snatched it from someone else.
Someone else, which he's agreed. It's not saying it wasn't his. He wasn't claiming.
No, the aid doesn't. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. When the aid, what does the aid say? What does that say? The aid say that he snatched it from him.
Yeah.
Okay.
He's not denying it.
No, but that what we said, that's not. But that's not good enough, because now that an aid exists, the only track you had to claim it's yours on the base to keep it on the basis of your claim has fallen away. The only reason we would be able to believe you when you said you took it and it was yours, which, let's face it, is not a great thing. It's a bit of a weird thing to say, right? You're not in a great place if you want to say, yes, it's true I took it, but you know why I took it? Because it's mine. Why is it mine? Because you took it from me at some previous date. The only reason to believe you is because of a migo. Migo, you could have said that you never took it. That migo falls away with an aid. So because of that, that's now that you don't have that anymore.
So you're saying that his testimony is less believable.
Yeah. He's not testing. Who's testimony? He's not making a testimony. He's just making a claim. He's saying that it was my item all along, and you happen to have it in your house. That's what he's saying. And we're saying, why on earth should we believe you? The only reason we could believe you is because you could have said you never took it. You can't do that now because there's an aid.
It's a slight circular logic.
There's a lot of circles here.
I know it. I know I'm not denying. I'm not using a migo because I don't need to.
Of course you do. Otherwise, how can you be believed?
Because the migo is not true.
What do you mean?
Because if I had said,
again,
I should be believed because I might have said I didn't snatch it. I did snatch it.
Who says? You're making up nonsense. That not you, I mean, this person is making up nonsense. If I walk into your house, Jeremy, okay, and I take away a computer from your house, and there's someone who saw me do it, and then I turn around to Bastin and I say, yes, you know why? Because that computer's really mine. Yeah. Well,
so are you saying that you just don't believe it because, so supposing he produces a proof of purchase.
Sorry, you're changing the case now.
No, I'm saying.
If you just.
You said it's because it's just such a ridiculous.
No, because it follows the normal rules of logic and ownership and everything else, right? If you have something in your house, if the computer is in your house, we're going to assume it's yours. Okay, we're not going to be able to. If I've got to do something which demonstrates that it's mine, right? If no one ever knew that computer belonged to you, and it's sitting now in my house, right? Then we can start saying, well, since you could have said that you never took it, and no one would ever know, and no one would ever be able to trace it as being Jeremy's, you understand? Then you could have done that, and that would have been great. And you didn't do that, and instead you made up a story. Okay, it might be a weird story, but you got a great migo. Migo, you could have just said you could have said nothing, so we should believe you, right? But that doesn't happen if there's an aid, because if there's an aid, I can never have said I never took it, because I have to make a shvur to deny the aid. I wouldn't do that. Got it? The point is that in the case of the nascha, right? In the case of the nascha, I'm not in a good place, and therefore, because if I can't make a shvur, I'm going to have to pay because the aid is coming against me, so I'm going to have to pay because I can't make a shvur because the shvur is not open to me in this case because of what I've said, right? Because I can't make a shvur that it was mine. That's not the shvur you're allowed to make, right? But hoch over here within karka zeh hausado l'siyule ka'asi. Here in the karka case, this aid is coming to support him. Shemei chechzik bo shalosh shonim. He's testifying that he's got a chazaka on it for 3 years. The zochabo, and he's zoche in it. If there was another aid together with this one, we would keep it. Give it to the machzik. Great. If there's another aid, you can keep it. And how can you say that through this aid is chayav shvua? he's obligated to make a shvua. And because he can't make a shvua, he has to pay. This aid is not coming to put him in a worse place. He loses the land because he doesn't have aidin. But it's not comparable at all to the case of Naschad Rabbi Abba. The logic, since you can't make a shvua, we make you pay, doesn't make sense in the case of the land. Because the aid is helping you. You can't be in a worse place because of the aid. Do you understand? That's the point. You can't. I'm claiming the land is mine, and I've been there for 3 years, and I bought it from you. An aid comes along and says, "True, absolutely, what you're saying is 100% true." Well, and we're going to do. It's a perverse logic. We're going to come. That's what he's asking. We're going to come along and say, because you've got an aid supporting your position, and an aid really has enough strength to make a shvua, and what would be that shvua? That shvua would be to deny the aid. You can't deny the aid because you agree with the aid, it's on your team, and therefore you've got to pay. You appreciate why that's an incredibly difficult argument to make. No? Ellie, makes sense? What do you think? It's tricky. No, it's tricky. The point of all Abba is doing is simply saying is that it's not, the two cases are nothing to do with one another, right? We're trying to solve our case, which ostensibly seems to be a straightforward case. And how are we solving it? By introducing a foreign case which doesn't seem to have relevance to it at all. Naschad Rabbi Abba is a fascinating case, fascinating story where there's no solution, and therefore no solution, you have to pay. You can't make a shvua, you have to pay. Fine. Nothing to do with our case. In our case, it's not relevant to our case. Our case, we don't have a situation in the I'm claiming something, an aid supports me, it's only one aid, so I'm not going to get the land, fine, right? I'm not going to get the land because I've only got one aid. But there's no idea of, because you couldn't make a shvua, therefore you have to pay. It's not relevant to our case. That's what we're saying. So what we're going to do now is sort of switch things around. And we're going to say, Eloi Damya, the last line, Rabbi Abba, if there was a case, if there is a land case that's comparable to Rabbi Abba, it would be a scenario of Lachad Sado or Latati Shani or Leperi. It would be a case of one aid where he's testifying he was there for 2 years and just that he consumed the fruit. Okay, now if that sounds confusing, okay, that's right, because there's now probably one of the longest Rashbams in the whole Masechta who's going to explain this case and why and how this works, right? How this works. So we're going to spend the rest of the shir on this Rashbam, hopefully. We'll try and see if we can get through it, right? So we can finish the sugya today. What we're doing now, very simply, is we're saying we understand the case of Naschad Rabbi Abba. That's very important, right? We need to start, we're turning things around. We started with a case about land, and we said, let's try and solve the din about the land case from Naschad Rabbi Abba, from the case of, we can't do that, because the case of Naschad Rabbi Abba has nothing to do with that case. So forget that, right? So now, we're starting with Naschad Rabbi Abba. We're starting with the case of the guy who snatched the piece of metal, where the din was paskin, that because you can't make a shvua, you've got to pay. And we're saying, can we dream up a land-based case that has the same din as the case of Naschad Rabbi Abba?
In the case of Naschad Rabbi Abba, why wouldn't the obvious thing to say to the guy that snatched the gold is to say, why wouldn't you claim it in court for coming to the house and stealing it?
Well, okay, that's an interesting question in the sense that this is to do with the sugya of whether or not we say ovid inish dinner enough shay or not. Is a person allowed to take the law into their own hands or not? Which is a whole sugya in and of itself. Are you permitted to do that? Are you permitted, if you know that the law is right, it's with you, let's say, right? For example, someone's took your things and you're 100% sure that it's your stolen goods. Are you allowed to walk into the house and take it back, right? That's a good question. But fundamentally, it's not really, it happened here that he did. So it's after that case already. So now there's a debate about who owns it, or who is the rightful owner, who is telling the truth and who is not. Whether he should have done it or not in the first place is a different question. Right?
But we're effectively throwing him out. And it seems to give us an easier way to throw him out.
Because I don't think that is a knockout claim. That's why. I mean, again, it is part of that sugya is whether you're allowed to claim it, go into. But the fact that you trespassed on my property is not necessarily a reason to say it's not yours, halachically. And even if you did the wrong thing, right? It could be that it could be you shouldn't have done it, but if you did, it might still, at the end of the day, if it's yours, it's yours. So it could be that's why that wasn't good enough. Right. Okay, let's see the Rasham. Elei Damya, so right, the last Rasham on the moment. Elei Damya, if it's comparable, Nascha, Rabbi Abba, it's comparable to Chad Sado, 1 aid to the Tatin Shanin or Leperi, 2 years and to fruit. Could go in, for example, this is the case. Ruvain de Tove le Shimon. Ruvain claims from Shimon, V'omalei, and he says to him, Gazalta la'are, you've stolen my land. V'achalta periseo shnosayim, and you have consumed its fruit for 2 years. That's what he said to him. You stole my land and you've eaten the fruit for 2 years. V'omalei Shimon, and Shimon says back to him, Zavantani ali, you sold it to me. Now he says you sold it to me. You sold me. Presumably you sold me the right. V'lesle l'Shimon eidei chazaka, right? And Shimon doesn't have any eidei chazaka. He's going to aid him 3 years now. The dinu la'ahaduri ar lamora. The din is therefore that he has to give the land back to the owner, no question, because he hasn't got any chazaka. Mekivan d'lesle eidei chazaka, because he doesn't have eidei chazaka. Oleperi, but in respect of the fruit that he's consumed of the land, the crops that he's eaten over those 2 years, mishtaba, he makes an oath, the bezavine achal, right, achaltinum, that he consumed them through purchasing, right, through purchasing. The Chaim alone, because we hold hapesha osar hu shehitim. The pesha osar is hu shehitim. In other words, when it comes to the peri, he has to make a shvur that he purchased the right. The Kamalan Pesha also shehit. It means the person who forbade something, he has the right to permit it. To justify his, in other words, to justify the fact that the reason why he's there. You got it? The reason why he's there. We'll explain how that happens, because there's obviously a problem here. And even though he's returning the land, peri lo mahada, he doesn't return the fruit. The holeko sadi, because there isn't any edim to ochila peros. There's no edim that he consume the fruit, right? There's no edim that he consume the fruit, right? So, migai, and since he's able to say lo yochli klal, I didn't consume fruit at all. Yochol meimar nami yochli bizvini. I consumed it through purchasing it, through buying the fruit. And therefore, all he has to do is make a shvur. Okay. So in other words, what we're saying here is that because we have no knowledge that he consumed the fruit, the only knowledge that we have that he consumed the fruit during those 2 years is through his own admission, right? Generally speaking, because of if you admit something yourself, we say a pesha, also a pesha, and no one asked you to do that. No one told you had to admit it. No one said that, right? That's what it means she'osar. You told us that you ate the fruit. You didn't, and so therefore you can justify and say, yes, I ate the fruit, but it was mine. The strange thing you have to get your head around here is the land has to go back. So we have to make some sort of split between the land and the fruit. The land he doesn't own. You with me? The land he has to give back. But the fruit, he's got a pesha awesome, right? If he had aided that he had consumed the fruit for 2 years, then that would be totally different. Then right? Then he would be obligated, we would obligate him to return even the fruits, like Rav Nachman. As Rav Nachman says, this was the sugya on the previous Amud, where Rav Nachman says clearly that if there are eidim that he consumed the fruit for 2 years, then he'd have to return the fruit as well. Like Rav Nachman says, Hadra Ara v'Hadri Peri. The land goes back and also the fruit. You might remember that. Someone said to someone else, what are you doing in this land? He said to him, I bought it from you. That was the case. He brought eidim that he actually ate the fruit. The guy's got eidim that he ate the fruit for 2 years. Rav Nachman says the land and the fruit goes back. Okay? Now, right. Now this is only part one, right? What have we said so far? We've created a scenario that is a 2-year scenario. Reuven says to Shimon and says, you stole my land. You consumed the fruit for 2 years. Shimon says, you sold it to me. You sold it to me. And at the end of the day, and there's no Eidim at this point, there's no Eidim at all, right? To the fact that he ate the fruit for 2 years. And therefore, although he's got to give the land back on the fruit, he should be able to say, Peshas or Beshit, you told us you ate it, therefore you can say that you ate that you actually you put the rights. Sorry. But I see Reuven, we'll have to sort it out for future weeks. Because it's for tomorrow night.
Tomorrow.
Yeah, it's for tomorrow night. For the session tomorrow night. So let's make sure it's not in the middle of the year in future. For next memo for next. But I see Reuven, right? But I see Reuven, it's been changed wrong. But I see Reuven Chatzada, and Reuven brought one aid, the Achal Peri Tartin Shonim. Reuven brought one aid that he consumed the fruit for 2 years. Okay, so this is the next twist. This is stage 2. Stage 1 is no Eidim at all so far, right? There's just a debate. Huh?
Saying that you bought the land off him.
That's what Shimon is saying, yeah.
And at the same time, it's saying that when you consume the fruit,
Yeah.
you consume what he paid for.
It is. It's
Because if he was right that he actually bought the land, then he wouldn't have to pay for the fruit.
yeah, it's true, and you've got to keep that in mind. There's the confusing element here in the sense that he's almost ruined by what he says because he's saying I bought the land. He clearly did not buy the land because he hasn't got Eidim, or at least we assume that we've got to give back the land. But nevertheless, on the fruit he's on stronger ground because ultimately he said he bought the land and the fruit, and on the fruit there's no proof that you consumed anything at all, and therefore you could have just denied the fruit altogether. And we wouldn't have been able to do anything. And therefore, you can be believed on that point that you purchased those rights. We can kind of do like a palginon. We can separate the land from the fruit. Okay, so we'll go on. But it doesn't stop there because Reuven brings one aid. Reuven brings one aid that he consumed the fruit for 2 years. This is very important. He's testifying, the case must be, that he's testifying that he only ate the fruit for 2 years. So he's not coming to support Shimon. That's very important. We don't want to run into the same problem we had in the previous case, right? If the aid says you use the fruit, right? You use the fruit, or I testify that you consumed it for 2 years, right? I think that's what the Rashba means. If he says I testify that you used the land for 2 years, then you're already supporting Shimon. You're helping him on his journey towards Chazaka. He didn't do that. He testified that he only used the fruit for 2 years. Understand? So included in that testimony is something which clearly contradicts Shimon. There's a difference between saying, I testify that you ate the fruit for 2 years, and saying, I testify that you ate the fruit for only 2 years. If I testify that you ate the fruit ki'im for only 2 years, then this aid is not helping Shimon, right? He is doing disastrous damage to Shimon. He's destroying his case. He's saying you are only there for 2 years. You don't know? You agree? Yeah.
No, it's the same thing. Because if you went to find another aid that says I know that you ate the fruit for 1 year, which was the year before or after.
No, but this aid is saying you were only there for 2 years. You were not there for 3. That's what he's saying. You were not there for 3. If I say you were only there for 2 years, that means I'm saying you were not there for 3. So I'm clearly not supporting you. I'm contradicting you. We've got to find a scenario. No, but it's not the same because we have to. Here we've managed to find a scenario where you can have an aid where the outcome of what the aid is saying is that you used the fruit for 2 years, but it's not supporting your claim because he's saying it was only 2 years, and therefore now, okay, so you're going to see in a minute how this is going to be comparable to the Naschal case. Omar Shimon said in Ochli, it's true, I did, you're right. He puts his hands up and says, you're right, I consumed the fruit, but v'didi Ochli, but it's mine. Shekanisi hakarka v'hapeiros. And because I bought, he's sticking by his guns, I bought the land and the fruit. Efes, however, lonis harti b'shtori. I wasn't careful with my shtar, which is always the claim of the guy who. Remember, that's always the claim, Cheskas Abatim, right? I wasn't careful with my shtar. So clearly, not being careful of your star when you've only been there for 2 years, right? For 2 years is no good, obviously, right? So you're going to lose the land. You're going to lose the land. Says the Gemora, says Rashbam, but this case, this case is comparable to the case of Rabbi Abba. We say, we can do exactly the same thing with this case as we did with Rabbi Abba, the Naskha. We can say, how will we judge this case? Shall we obligate him to return the fruits? There isn't 2 Eidim that he ate it. So we can't, why should we make him pay, right? If you're going to say it's because he admitted it, and that's why we should make him pay it back. He admitted it. He lost the land because he hasn't got chazaka, and he admitted that he ate the fruit to make him pay. No. He said, it's true, I ate it because it's mine. That's what he said. And in that scenario, there's no admission of guilt. There's no admission to, make him guilty, make him pay back, right? Obligate him because he's saying it's his. He's saying it's his. It's not an admission of guilt as in I admit I ate the fruit. Here you go. He's saying I ate the fruit because I own it. That's his claim, right? So that's why should we make him pay? So you're going to say, let's go to again exactly the same as we did at the top of the Yom. Go back to the other extreme, niftarei b'migoy. Let's exempt him with a migoy. What would be the migoy? Migoy, he could have said, no, he could have denied. I didn't eat, right? Again, the migoy, he could have said, I didn't eat any fruit. So believe him when he says, I ate the fruit, but it's mine. Exactly the same as we said with the naskha, right? That was the second way of approaching it. This says Rashbam, that doesn't work either. There is one aid that says that he consumed the fruit for 2 years. And he's unable to deny the words of the aid to make a false shur. So the stage 2 doesn't work either, exactly the same as the niaska. He doesn't have a migo. You can't say, migo, you could have said, no, I didn't do anything. How can, well, you can't do that because the aid is contradicting you. And you wouldn't do that. You wouldn't deny, because that would end up, if you denied, you'd have to make a shur, and you wouldn't make a full shur. No, yeah, so let's go to the third option. Let's make him make a shvur with 1 aid. If there were 2 of them, then they would obligate him to pay money. And the rule is, wherever you have 2 who would make him pay, 1 can make him make a shvur. Let's make him make a shvur. Says more no. Where do we say that 1 aid can make him make a shvur? That's only when he denies that which 1 aid testifies about. Right? That's when he can make a shvur that what you, the aid, are saying is incorrect. That's the shvur you're allowed to make. That is the only option, as we said before, that you can make a shvur to deny the aid. Over here, he's admitting that he ate. He's just claiming that it's mine. He's mechuyev shvur, and therefore he's obligated to make a shvur. He cannot make a shvur, and the mishalim needs to pay. Right? So that is how the Rashbam sets out the case. That when we said in the Gemora, idam yehod Rabbi Abba, if you can bring a land case that's comparable to Rabbi Abba, that case would be where you have chad sada, 1 aid, who is saying that you were only there for 2 years. So the aid is not supporting you, but he's going against you because he's saying you were only there for 2 years. Ulatarti shoni, it's only 2 years. Ulaperi, and the dispute is about fruit. Here, I've got an aid against me. I'm claiming that the fruit is mine. I took that fruit, I ate that fruit, but that fruit was mine. I bought it. And the din is, therefore, that you've got an aid which should make you make a shvur. What shvur would he make you make? A denial shvur. I can't make a denial shvur because I say that I did. I say that I did take it. You got to pay because you can't make a shvur. You got to pay. You got to pay the fruit back. Okay, that's what the Rashbam says.
How are we separating ownership of land to ownership of fruit?
Why not?
Because surely the 2 are the same thing. he's saying it's my land,
Yeah.
but he doesn't have any agency.
Yes, this was the same thing Yossi asked before. It's tricky, that it is tricky. It's not entirely clear how we resolve that. At the end of the day, what is he saying? He's saying, I bought the land and the fruit. So we're saying, well, on the land, you've got nothing low leg to stand on because that follows a certain set of rules which you haven't fulfilled. But on the fruit, you are saying that you bought the fruit. So there's no reason why on that point we can't still, keep you in place. It happens to be he has to pay anyway because he can't make a shvur and there's an eidechot, whatever. Your question wasn't really on that. It was more like before we got to the stage of the eidechot, right? It's a fair question. It's a fair question. They probably talk about it, right? Let's see if we can finish this Rashbam. This is, I want to finish this good today. This is how this shitta appears to me. This is how I found it also in Rabbeinu Hananel's commentary. And there are other versions of how to explain this Gemora, but they don't have any substance, he says. The Chaim on Rabbi Abba, we hold in the case of the Nascha, like Rabbi Abba, we paskan like Rabbi Abba, Mediolef Abaye Minot, from the fact that Abaye learns from it. The very fact, he says, that Abaye wanted to suggest, or in fact, Abaye wanted to learn from the case of the Nascha. That's right, he did. This was the conclusion. He said, Rabbi Abba's case, if you want to learn from Rabbi Abba, the case of Rabbi Abba, learn to the case of 2 years and fruit and whatever. So you see that he held like Rabbi Abba. The Avag of the Plegi Alei Rav Shmuel Perekol and Ishboin, even though Rav and Shmuel dispute the din of Rabbi Abba in Perekol and Ishboin and Shvuah. Stormy, they say, Chozr Shvuah le Sinai. They say, no, we don't say someone who is obligated to make a shvuah and cannot make it. The halacha is he has got to pay, right? They say, no, we don't say that. What do we say instead? We say, Chozr Shvuah le Sinai. If you can't make the shvuah, it goes back to Har Sinai. And the din is the exact opposite of Rabbi Abba. That's the other option. You could say, you can't make a shvuah, well, go back to square one. What does it mean, square one? I'm holding it at the moment. If I'm holding it at the moment, let me keep it. But we say also in a Mishnah there, the Yisomim cannot claim from other Yisomim except with a shvuah. And Rav and Shmuel both say, Lo shonu ela shemeis malva b'chai halovna. This is only when the malva predeceased the borrower. These are Yisomim orphans from other orphans. They're both claiming, the orphans are claiming from other orphans. The din is they can only claim with an oath. And Rav and Shmuel say, this is only where the malva died while the borrower was still alive. Avul meis lova b'chai malva. If the borrower dies, b'chai malva, when the malva, the lender, is still alive, right? The malva has already become obligated to the bnei lova to get his money. Shvuah, he's already become obligated to make an oath. And a person cannot give as an inheritance an oath to his sons, which means money upon which he is obligated to make an oath, he can't give that as an inheritance to his children. Alma, so we see that means to say that now his children, since the borrower died while the lender was still alive, that lender has now had to make an oath that he's entitled to get this money from him. He can't give that over to his children. Alma, so we see since he's obligated to make an oath that he never received this loan, this debt. That's the oath that the malva has to make. Yeah, if he's facing a dead borrower and his children, the children of the borrower, he's got to make an oath that he never received the debt while their father was alive. The Yisomim, the orphans, can't make that oath. They can't say they never received the debt. How do they know? All they can make is Ela Shalo Pakdeinu Abo. They can just make an oath that our father didn't leave us the money. It's a different oath. That's not the oath their father had to make. That wasn't the oath that he was supposed to make. And and the orphans of the borrower, they also can't make a shua that their father paid him back, paid the debt off. So therefore they're stuck. No one can make a shua. So what did Rabbi Shmuel say? In that case, they say the halacha is he's not able to get his money. That's what they say. He's not able to get his money. He effectively is stuck. The only case where Yisomim can get the money they're allowed to make a shvua is only when the lender dies when the borrower is still alive. So there was never chiyuv shvua because the lender never had that requirement to make an oath. Because when he died, right, the borrower was still alive. Normally there's no need to make an oath. If you're facing a living borrower, there's no need to make an oath. It's only when a borrower is dead. But if the borrower had already died when the mother, and therefore he's facing orphans, which means he has to make a shua, his children can't make the shua that he would have to make because they have no idea whether he's received the debt or not. They can just say, our father never left us the money. They can't say, you can't, and therefore, the other side also can't make an oath that their father paid it off, presumably because they don't know, or maybe because that's not the debt the shua they're able to make. Alma, so we see. So critically, what did Rabbi Shmuel say? Shelo Yifra. The din is the Malva children do not get their debt back. They don't get their money. Alma, so we see Alma Chuyev Shua, the same thing, just proving that the same thing. So you see someone who's obligated to make a Shua, and neither side can make an oath. Rabbi Shmuel, Chazor Shua Sinai. Rabbi Shmuel hold the Shua goes back to Har Sinai. It's an expression. Ve'ein kan lo Shua v'lo piran. There's no oath, and there's no paying back. Right? That's it. What happens? The descendants, the children of the loaf, in this case, get off scot-free. They don't pay it back. Right? Rabbi Abba Poligalayu, or Rabbi Lezer, I think Poligalayu, Rabbi Lezer disputes Rav and Shmuel, might be Rabbi Lezer, but Yershin Shpoin Shvuas Yershin V'Noitnen. They say no. They say the inheritors of the borrower, they make what's called a Shvuas Yershim, a Shvua of inheritors, and they take the money. They dispute Rav and Shmuel. Right? But Rav and Shmuel clearly are against Rabbi Abba. Because Rabbi Abba would say, if you're mechuyev shua and you can't make the oath, you've got to pay. In which case the children of the lender would have to pay. But that doesn't happen. Right? The din is that they are they don't have to pay, and therefore things stay effectively where they are. And therefore they don't pay back the debt. Varmin and Hossam, we say over there, Hi Daina to Avad Krebeloza Avad, to Avad Krav Shmuel Avad. That if a Dayan paskins like Rebeloza, then it's valid, and if he passes Rabbi Shmuel, he's valid. So therefore, either psak is valid. I feel like over here, even so, Hilchos Rabbi Abba, Rabbi Shmuel. This is the point that Rosh Hashanah wants to get to. The halacha is like Rabbi Abba and not like Rabbi Shmuel. Like Rabbi Abba in our Gemora. That the din will be that if you can't make a shvua, you have to pay. Damin and Hossam, because we say over there, we don't add on to this. They made a special takana not to add on to the words in Rav Shmuel over there. To learn from this din a special case of orphans from orphans for other dinin. And to say the oath goes back to Har Sinai. It was only in that specific case of orphans from orphans do we hold like Rav and Shmuel, but after the fact, if a Dayan Paskin like that, it would be valid. Why? Because of a special institution to help orphans, the B'nai Lover, the children of the borrower, the Chasinon Alayu, we have pity on them, Shaloi Lifra Mehen Shvua Ma'al Yaisa, not to take money from them without a proper shvua, without making a proper oath. So it was a very special din. Rashbam is explaining to us, don't ask me questions from the case in Shvuas. It was a unique ruling there that even if someone is obligated to make a Shvua and they can't make that Shvua, although normally we would say, like our Gemora, if you can't make a Shvua, you've got to pay, right? You've got to pay. There they made a special takona. That's to save and protect Yisomim because the other side can't get the money because they can't make an oath. As we said, the children of the orphaned children of the lender can't make an oath. So we say we exempt the borrower's children, right, to protect them. Other halachas, Rabbi Abba, we hold Rabbi Abba that someone is obligated to make an oath and cannot do so if the Torah obligates you to make an oath because there's one aid, and you cannot make the oath, such as in our case, because what you said contradicts the you can't say an oath I didn't take it because you're saying you did take it, right? Then the din is you have to pay. The Gam Rabbi Nachanel Pasuk the Hilchos Rabbi Abba. Rabbi Nachanel also paskins the halacha is like Rabbi Abba, right? So I'm sorry that was a little bit rushed at the end. I have to go because I'm speaking at this wedding. Forgive me, but the point is that the halacha is like Rabbi Abba. In the event that you can't, you're obligated to make a shvua and you can't, then you need to pay back. And in Mitzvah Hashem, so the next case, we'll start the case of the ship, the new sugya. Okay.